deal with pressure. I have a first grader and a fifth grader this year, and I'm already noticing that the expectation of my first grader, she's coming home with homework every night, reading and spelling quizzes. The pressure is already mounting in the first grade. I'm not entirely convinced that that's where we want to be taking our kids in this age where we have enough pressure as it is. So I'm not criticizing the MCAS. I think tests are important, and learning to take tests and learning the gamesmanship of taking tests is part of life in the modern age. But I don't think we want to stress kids out to the point where they can't function. Enough said.
We'll begin with Mr. Weiss. What is the single greatest challenge facing the school department in the next 3 years? How will you address that challenge?
The single greatest challenge will be the budget, because that's going to be running the whole school system. How do you succeed with a good budget? The only thing I would have to work on is to cut back all non-critical situations. The only critical system in a school is the teacher in the classroom. We have numerous excellent teachers, but they are kind of handcuffed to the back by the administration. I would like to see the administration be downsized and let the teachers teach. I think that would solve the budget problem, which in turn would solve most any other problem in the school system.
Ms. Hardy-Vaca.
The greatest challenge facing the school department next year will be the budget. Our budget for next year is slightly under 3% more than what we have this year. And already the school department has a spending freeze in place. I'm surprised we have a custodian here tonight to let us in. What we need to address next year will probably be a spending freeze in place in early fall. And what you need on the school committee are individuals that, such as myself, that put that budget together. I know the goals that are set out by the school department. I know the ed reform mandates that are imposed upon us. I put that budget together. I understand the town's revenue forecast. Prior to being on the school committee for the past 6 years, I was 6 years on the finance committee. It's going to be very tight, and you need an in-depth understanding of this school system, what we're trying to achieve, what programs are in place, and an awful lot of prayers on behalf of the community. But that will be the biggest challenge that we face next year.
Mr. Schuler.
Okay. Well, we probably all guess that money is the issue. It's what makes the world go round. In an era of limited resources and having on our plates for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, however many years, the Batchelder school issue, how to do right by the middle school and the high school, all of the while balancing an operating budget that is very difficult to balance. So it does boil down to monies. But I think one of the key issues here right now is deciding what we're going to do with the elementary school space and utilization problems. And I guess this is probably, in fact, I probably got a minute and a half here to come out and say why it is that I favor a Batchelder school solution. We haven't seen a Batchelder school solution yet. I will say that right off the bat. What we had was Todd Lee. We brought in an architect who has done a lot of projects like the Batchelder School, and said I can bring it in on budget, on time. I've done it 40 or 50 times. He was not allowed to work on it, and the project proposal we had is basically the Batchelder School with a couple of bowling alleys hung on the front of it and a $20 million price tag. I'm being a little bit facetious, but that's what it works out to be. It's not aesthetically or historically pleasing, and the price was pumped way up. There's a group in town that has a counter proposal which will be made public next Tuesday, that has an aesthetically pleasing solution to the Batchelder space on site, financially productive and less money than the Swan Pond. It allows us to keep that resource on site where we should have it, which is in the middle of our town common.
Mr. Van Beaver.
I think the biggest challenge is going to be supporting the quality of the services we must maintain for our educational goals and objectives in North Reading. Setting a budget is one component of that, but it's not the component of it. It shouldn't be the component of it. We need to continue looking for external funding sources, both internal, public and private. We need to make sure we're hiring the best caliber staff, teachers. It is people, in the day, it's people, it's not facilities. It's quality of those individuals who work hard and are dedicated to educational needs. So I think maintaining the educational levels that we all want to achieve, and we have achieved in this town, is going to be the biggest challenge we have over the next 3 years. And certainly, like I said, the budget is a component of that, but I'd like to think beyond that in terms of some of the, both I call offline and online resources, both technology resources and book resources, et cetera, that we need for that. Making sure the caliber of the staffing we have is the highest caliber we can possibly find. Since we have a great town, we have a great environment, we want to encourage and market folks, staffing to stay with us and to obtain additional staffing when available. So I think that's a challenge in front of us, and I don't want to dwell on the budget as much as the quality of the education we want to maintain in this town, and we have achieved in this town, and keep it to the standards we all like to have.
Mr. Weiss, would you like to rebut?
I do have one thing about the budget that was set in place. I think the taxpayers of this town would be more apt and respected and also willing to give the committees what they're asking for if it wasn't done with so much deception. I look at the operating budget for North Reading, I look down the school and I'm seeing coaches' salaries, teachers' salaries and stuff, but it's not split out. It's not itemized enough for me as a blue-collar worker to figure out what's what and where. I think the budget can be redone, even though it might be an outstanding budget. It does not make sense to me and probably several others in this town.
Ms. Hardy-Vaca?
Yes, a couple of points. One comment, the biggest piece of the budget will be the contracts. It's a contract year. And I've negotiated 2 contracts with the school department, and that will be a major component of next year's budget. Secondly, the school department budget, 117 line items, and a public hearing where anybody is invited to attend and ask more details. But to Mr. Schuler, I take exception to your insults, and that's how I take them. The school building committee has worked effortlessly, and we did not throw a few bowling alleys on a school building. We took that project seriously, we took it to heart, and we conducted it during the holiday season. We conducted it in public. Everyone knows the name of the 2 architects that were involved in that project. Earlier this evening, the Board of Selectmen were asked about cooperation and the spirit on boards. This is an example of what we don't need.
Thank you. Mr. Schuler?
Well, I disagree. I don't think that proposal was put forth on the Bachelor School allowed that wonderful piece of historical artifice of this town to put its best foot forward. It can be done and it will be done. I think that proposal was ill-fated from the outset. It never had a chance, and I'm not so sure that people behind it wanted it to have a chance, but that's another issue. I think one of the major challenges in the community right now in the school is open and honest communication and involving the community in the decision-making process. We've seen a lot of it here now, but I think coming up with budgets couple of weeks before they have to be plowed through, people need time to get involved in the decision-making process. The other thing is what I call the water company syndrome. You take a shower, you don't go into the office and say, hey, water company, you did a nice job on that shower. No, what you do is you complain when the shower doesn't work. So we tend to complain about things that aren't going well, but in fact, we have a great system here in place. The Bachelor, all the schools are doing swimmingly based on any standard.
Thank you. Mr. Van Beaver?
To re-emphasize the point that as a community, we need to have a premise and a basis to the educational standards and goals we have, which includes the academic programs we have, the type of programs we have, extracurricular activities, extra activities after school. But I think we need to form that basis, the consensus of the community first about what type of education standards, goals, objectives we have Then extrapolate from that the budget, the monies we need to achieve both publicly and privately to obtain those goals and objectives. So I know we've talked a lot about the budget and like that, but for me to extrapolate what that budget should be, I first understand what the educational goals, objectives, programs, things to support that must be first, based upon our community needs. Once we have that understood, then we can determine how do we fund those programs, those educational goals and standards.
Okay. Next question, we'll begin with Ms. Hardy-Vaca. How do you propose to solve North Reading's space needs in its schools?
I would propose that the community support the building of the Swan Pond School for all the right reasons. It meets the program needs, it addresses the enrollment needs, it's the most fiscally responsible plan, it leaves the center of town preserved in its historic state. It would allow the use of the bachelor school for administrative offices and special ed and curriculum offices that are housed here, and would allow us to free up space in this building. I would also ask that the community consider supporting the feasibility study for the middle school and the high school for the same reasons, not only for programs and enrollment, but our buildings need some capital work, especially this building. It needs a lot of work done to it in its infrastructure. And I believe that once the community hears the reasons and weighs the facts, that they will come down and support both of those projects. And it's a momentum that we need to move forward. It's not devastating that a town has a building project. Even your homes have a project or a list on the refrigerator, I'm sure. That's life. We continue to improve and address our needs. And if it's done in a fiscally responsible way, in a plan that's worked out with the Finance Committee, then it can happen, and it can benefit the children, the taxpayers, and the community.
Mr. Schuler.
How do we solve our space needs? I think the first thing I'm hoping we can get people behind is to reevaluate the utilization of the bachelor school. Why? There are a number of reasons. Number one, to retain the vitality in the center of town. When I first moved here 17 years ago, we had the vital library, we had town hall in the center. If the last Funk plan had gone through, we would be building a police department out near the outskirts of town and putting the Swan Pond School online as well. That almost pulls the rug out from under the vitality of the center of town. It's an important issue, I think. Secondly, the aesthetics and the psychology of architecture. The massacre didn't happen in places like Columbine coincidentally. There's a psychology and aesthetics of architecture. The bachelor school works with little kids for a reason. It's a very comforting environment. I think at that age, a new Bauhaus Skinner box, as I call them, modernistic building is not a solution for young kids. If you walk through the bachelor school, as much as we've trashed the school, it still works as a school. The kids do very well there. It's a very soothing and womb-like, if you want to use it, environment. It works. I think that the bachelor school is the only solution that we can get a town consensus behind. There are a lot of people in this town who relate to the bachelor school. They went there or they sent their kids there. And I think that they're looking for a reason to throw the support behind the bachelor school. I think that if we can tether that momentum, we can build a consensus there that we haven't been able to do for the Swan Pond. The Swan Pond also, I think, is the wrong place for the wrong reasons, and there are all kinds of things coming out now. What do you do about septic and sewerage and so on and so forth? People need to understand a vote against Swan Pond is not a vote against education in this town.
Mr. Van Beaver.
I support the Swan Pond School just based upon the facts, based upon the information we have available to us today. I attended several meetings back in the fall for the bachelor school renovation. I'm very open-minded about different alternatives. And just frankly, there's data there, there's information for me to support today, at least. And I feel that we are in need today for it. We waited 6 years for this now. We've talked about examples of inefficient facilities available today for our kids. And clearly we need to do something. I think as a community, we need to do something soon. We can't afford to keep continuing to wait. So based upon data, based upon the information that's available, we have seen all the town meeting, that was presented to us,